Okay, so today's class is on ellipses or circles in perspective. Now, so this is a little bit more of a technical class in the sense of it's not about free drawing, it's sort of honing in on a particular skill, which is actually really important. You may or may not notice, but now after this you will notice so many objects around us are circular or round, right? Cups, jars, lamps, bottles, vases, you name it, it's probably a circle. So the skill for learning to draw circles in perspective is pretty straightforward and easy to understand, but practicing it is really important and takes a little more time. A lot of practice is always important in drawing anyway. So I'm just going to give you a few sort of tips and tricks or things to look out for when drawing circles in perspective and to think about that you can take and practice in your drawing. So what do I mean when I say circles in perspective? I'm just going to show you, I'm going to share my screen and show you a couple of, like my shamrock desktop. Okay. What I mean is, let's see, it's not opening. There we go. So these are my freehand drawings. So it's very difficult, I think we all know, to draw a circle straight or, without it being a little lopsided. But what I want to give you the sense of is if we had a circle inside a square, this helps us to think about perspective. So the only time I would see a perfect round circle like this is if I were looking from directly above or directly below, right? Like say I was looking directly into a cup, right? This is what it would look like. Most of the time we're not looking from that point of view. Instead, we're looking more something like this, which is where I see a part of the circle, right? And this circle is sort of laying down a little bit more, which means it's closer to our eyes. So I made this quick little drawing here, and this line in the middle represents our eye line, so where we're looking. So the basic thing to know about circles in perspective is the way in which they curve in relationship to your eye line. So once you're looking at a circle that goes above your eye line, it starts to curve slowly and more dramatically with the center being higher and the edges curving down. Right, and then it is the opposite. Once it goes below our eye level, which is probably more the case of things we'll see, like objects sitting on a table, for example, will probably be higher than the object. So the circles will be lower than our eyes, which means they're going to be curving like this. So the curve becomes more exaggerated as you move away from your eye line, like your line of sight. And for example, if we're going below our line of sight, the center of the circle will be lower than the sides. Okay. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to practice this. So theory is helpful, but practice is, right, what makes theory make any sense. So we're just going to practice with a few different simple drawings of round things, like a cup and a bowl is what we're going to practice with today. And then we're going to do one and then the other, and then we're going to do them both together so you can kind of compare while you're drawing. So let me look at my notes real quick. So basically, I'm not going to say any more than that in terms of the theory of it, because what I think is in the drawing, when you go to draw, you'll start to have questions, right, once you draw. Oh, hi, Jan. Jan says, I'm so glad I'm here for this lesson today. Thank you for being here. I know it's very early, so, and you're in good company. There's also someone, Catherine from California as well. So I want to show you one other, so I did just this little quick drawing of a cup, right? And so what I did was, so my eye line, like my sort of line of sight is up here. So I'm looking down and I can see the top of this cup, right? And then this is the bottom. And what I did is I drew the circle that the whole circle, even though my cup wasn't transparent, but I tried to imagine it. Now, one thing is, see how it goes lower, the circle is taller as it goes lower. And as it gets closer to my eye, this is not as tall, the center of the circle or the ellipse. Now, one thing you can do when you're drawing circles is you can draw the whole circle, right, to kind of check your drawing, even if you don't see the whole thing. You can also, something that can be very helpful is draw the axes, right, the horizontal and vertical axes to kind of check and see, like, it's sort of it makes you stop and think about how tall is my circle versus how wide. So that's the kind of thing we want to start thinking about and looking for. Now, some pitfalls are sometimes we tend to make the ends very pinched and pointy. So be careful of that, right? They're never pointy. Even when they're narrow, they're not pointed. They're always going to be slightly rounded. And the more you see, like the bigger the circle is, then the less pointy they are. You see how the edge here goes this way, and then the edge here goes this way. So we're going to start to draw, and we're going to think about how tall is our circle versus how wide. Now, this is where measuring can come in really handy. So if you're here for measuring and you know how to measure, take the time to just measure how tall versus how wide is your circle when you go to draw. Okay, so before we start, does anyone have any questions, something they just wanted to ask or clarify before we just jump in? You can either unmute yourself or you can type in the chat box. Okay, so no one has any questions. So we're just going to start, and we'll do like I'll time us for 3 minutes, and at 3 minutes I'll check in, and you can tell me I need more time, or I'm done, or I don't need more time. We can move on. So we're just going to draw some simple objects, and we're going to think about the different circles. Now, this might be a little bit hard to see. I apologize because of the light. It's so it's sort of washed out. But so we're going to draw this cup, and you don't have to worry about the handle. You can draw it in or not. It doesn't matter. But let's think about this overall shape. So it's almost like a triangle, right? It's wider on the top than the bottom. It's sort of slanting in. And then there's a circle on the bottom, and then there's the circle on the top. So let's just take 3 minutes and draw this cup, and then we'll check in and see how it went. Okay. Okay, so if you're ready, we'll start. Okay, so that's 3 minutes. Does anyone need more time? You can tell me a chat or unmute yourself. Or was that enough time? Okay, so Marcia's saying that's enough. Okay, so does anybody want to share or ask questions? You know, what did you notice in trying to draw this? Okay, so Jan says, I'm not sure that more time would help. Okay, so what questions do you have? Or, you know, what difficulties do you run into? Okay, so, okay, somebody says, I have trouble imagining the circle on the bottom. Okay, great. So this is really good. So one thing is, let me get my board. So one thing to sort of keep in mind, right? Because there is sort of a abstract element where in the sense of you have to sort of imagine it in your mind, but you can also see it. But with that said, what you want to keep in mind is, in this example that we just did of the cup, I'm going to take a black marker just so that you can see better. So let's say we have the top of the cup, right? So my drawings are not going to be very straight. So we see that our circle is like this. And the top of the cup is closer to our eye. So what we know conceptually is that as you get lower, the curve is going to be more exaggerated. And because it's lower, below our eye, so if this is our first curve, the second curve is going to be, let's say, more curvy, where the center is going to be lower. And right, you see how this is curving like this, but this one is going to be curving more. Now, you want to keep this in your mind, but you want to try and see it, right? And observe the difference between the two. And so you can, how to try and visualize this curve where you can't see it is use this top one where you can as a base to work from. So if I can see this, I see how it works, right? So this is also kind of a way to check and see visually if this works. So try and draw the circle all the way around, even if you don't see it. And then you can see, do these make sense to each other? And then compare them to the object that you're drawing. I don't know, does that help, Jen? Okay, so somebody's saying it's difficult to keep the symmetrical round. Yeah, so what you can do, this is when it really helps. If you draw a straight, if you draw a straight line, and this is where the sides, right, of the ellipse come, right? So then you can see, are they equidistant on the top and bottom? Right, so they should be. And the center will either be higher or lower than the sides. And the sides will line up, right? But they're not pointed. They're not like this. They're always going to be round. But you want to start really closely observing your object and see they usually either slightly go out beyond the edge here, or they make a very distinct angle, something like this. Yeah, you can almost draw it as a hard angle and then soften it later. But this gets you to really start observing closely and thinking about the circle. This is a really challenging thing to draw for everyone. Also because naturally we draw one side more lopsided than the other. And that's just for everyone. That's the case. Okay, so someone said they had trouble with the proportions of the cup. So what you can do is measure. Before you start drawing at all, you want to take some basic measurements. And that is using your arm and your pencil. You can measure the overall width and then compare that to the height. And then you can compare the width and the height, the width and the height of just the ellipse, for example, in the circle in the top of the cup that you can see into slightly. Compare that, right, the height or the width to the overall height and width of the cup. And you can mark those on your paper and then draw from there, right? Measuring is really, really important. And it's slow, but it actually works. It just takes time. Okay, someone said my sides are too straight, hard. So this is the thing about, I think what you mean is it's the point in which the ellipses is sitting on the sides of the object, right? So here's your ellipses and here's the side. So you want to start really closely looking. How does it actually look in real life? Right? This is one of the things that we draw without truly looking. We do it from our mind, right? It's like when we're kids and so, at some point we start to replace like lollipop shaped trees for actual shapes of trees. So this is one of these things where even though we think we know what it looks like, you have to stop and closely observe. And the longer you look, the more you'll see. And so what you can do is, you know, make a mark, right, where you think, and then, you know, with a sort of, you can take like a light pencil and then compare it to the thing that you're drawing and go back and forth. And you can erase, and just start tweaking. But I think what you're saying, Jan, is it's about the point in which the object and the ellipses or the circle meet. So observe and see, does the ellipses go outside the edge? Does it stay inside when it starts to curve? You have to just start really looking closely and see what's actually happening. Okay, somebody said I have difficulty getting the right angle on the handle. Yeah, so something that can be helpful for that is also looking at the negative space. So what I mean when I say that is, for example, if this is my cup, there's going to be, so if this is the handle, look and see what is the shape of this space in here, right? And normally handles, depending on the angle, we'll see a negative space in here as well, but also here. So where the cup and the handle meet, look and see what is that little negative space here. That will help you see that angle a lot easier. Okay. Yeah, so someone says, I found that the right side of my circle is higher. That's that, yeah, so the thing is, you'll notice that you naturally make one side different than the other. Maybe you always make the right side too tall, right? And the left side too squished. So you start to know these things about yourself, and you can compensate and adjust for them, or just look for them when you're drawing. Okay. Yeah, so I hope that answers most of the questions. Yeah, so measuring the bottom curve, right? You can't exactly measure it, but you can try and draw it all the way through, and that will tell you a lot about, you'll see, does it look right? Is it too, and you can make it in relationship to the top curve. Okay, so we're going to do it again, but this time we're going to use a bowl, and that's because you can see more into the top of the bowl. Does anyone have any more questions before we try the next one? Okay. So let's have a look and see. Okay, so here also, I'm sorry, it's really hard to see. I should have noted that before. We have three curves, right? There's this one, it has a little foot. There's the bottom of the bowl, right? So like this is all one shape, sort of. And then there's this circle or ellipse on top, right? So you can measure, for example, the height of this compared to the height of this. Which one's taller, right? Before you get started, just to kind of give you a guideline of how to set up your drawing. You can also compare the height versus the width. And you can also even draw axis lines, like vertical and horizontal lines. You see how I lined up this background with the edges almost of the ellipses, right? So that way, that can kind of be a midway point, and they should be maybe more or less equal, or might be a little bit shorter on the bottom. You can measure and see. They should be pretty close. Okay, so let's have 3 minutes and try and draw this and see what happens. Okay, we can start. Okay, and stop. So does anyone need more time? I'm just going to put the chat box. Well, was that enough time? Okay. So what happened? Does this help? Did you find this one more challenging? Was this one easier? What did you learn from this second drawing? Okay, Marcia says this was way more challenging, lots of measuring. It seemed easier, and I'm too slow. You're not too slow. Actually, this is something that really requires a lot of time and practice. This is the abbreviated version, let's say. Okay, so someone said it was easier with drawing the axes, right? The lines, like the horizontal and vertical axes through the ellipse. Connie said I tried to measure more, but my bowl still leaned toward one direction. Yeah, so that's a great observation. That can just be fixed with making a straight line. So what I mean is that can be solved by if you make a line, and that could be, say, in this case, the bowl, like the bottom, right, of the bowl. Now you can make also an axis line, which is for the ellipse, and this will keep it straight. Also, if let's say the bottom, you know, it comes here, right, something like this for it to sit on. So that's just because it gets off balance if it's not, you know, sitting sort of pretty horizontal. It was hard to get my hand to draw what my eyes see. Yeah, so that's really great observation. One thing I really suggest with, I should have said this at the beginning, actually, that probably would have been really helpful. One good way to approach this is, in the last lesson, I think it was, we talked about holding your pencil rather than holding it like this, which is, it's a very tight grip. So this, when you're first sketching an ellipses, you can try holding your pencil like this, which gives you more free movement of your arm from your elbow and shoulder. And this will actually help you have a wider, freer range of motion, and it will be easier to draw circles this way because you're never going to get it right on the first go. So the best way is to make a light sort of sketch, you know, and you can even do like several goes, right? And then you can take an eraser and pick away, but it gives you, you know, something to see. So if I draw my axis line, say, then I can start to see, oh, okay. And then I can change the grip of my pencil when I'm more sure, when I feel more sure of where it is, and darken what is the correct line. So that's maybe an easier way to approach it, since it's a sort of searching at the beginning. Does it matter where you start the drawing? No, it doesn't. So that's really up to you. One thing I would say is I would measure and make some notes, like marks on your paper about how tall and wide your object is. So for example, I'd say, okay, it looks like my, say my ellipses on the top of my bowl is something like this, right? And so, but the bottom of the bowl is going, maybe it's slightly taller than the height of this ellipses on top. So I'm going to measure that and make a mark. And that just makes it easier for me when I go to make my drawing. So I would say it doesn't matter where you start, just you want to make things proportionally in relationship to each other. So you can start with the you know, I could even start, rather than doing one segment at a time, I could start by doing an overall shape of the whole thing and then break it into different parts, right? like this. So I'm normally not drawing backwards, but I think you get the idea. So whatever works for you. We'll take some experimenting to sort of see, what makes sense to you in your process. Okay. Does anybody else have questions or want to share? Okay. So we'll do one last drawing, and this time we'll give you 5 minutes. Maybe we should give 6. How about we'll give 5 minutes, we'll check in at 5 minutes and see, you can say you need more time if you do. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the cup and the bowl together and draw them in relationship to each other. So this is what you would normally do in a drawing, right? You have more than one object. And being in relationship to each other, it's going to make you think, how big are the ellipses compared to each other, right? Like how tall, how wide, and the circles, right? How they get more exaggerated as they go below, or they become a little bit more straight as they come up higher to your eyes. Okay. So now we're going to work on this. So I realize this is challenging, but this is just sort of a little taste, right? It's to get us to start thinking and looking and practicing. And this is an exercise that never goes away, I have to say. It doesn't matter how long you draw ellipses for, they're always something that just take a lot of time and thought. So we'll take 5 minutes and try and draw both. And at 5 minutes, I'll ask you if you need more time. Okay, we can start. Okay. So that's 5 minutes. I'm gonna open the chat box and let me know. Is that enough time, or do people want a few more minutes? Okay. Okay, how about we'll have 2 more minutes? Okay, just a couple more minutes. Okay, and that's our time. Okay, so I'd love to hear from some of you that would like to share either, challenges you're having, successes you're having, questions you have, anything that can be helpful to this process of circles in perspective.
I'm going to share. Okay, what I found on this one was doing the axes and then kind of going back to them afterwards really helped me like get in the curvature correctly. It's better than I had expected it would come out, but working it.
Yes, beautiful. Those are great. Yeah, because with just your eye alone, it's like almost impossible to get those two sides balanced, right? So in a way,
Absolutely.
you even break it down into quadrants. Okay, that looks really good. Are you happy with your drawing?
Yeah, they're not quite, relation to each other, the distance, but otherwise.
Yeah, but the distance, yeah, but it's more about the height, right? Because the lower it goes, the taller the circle gets.
Yeah, so I really like the whole axes, the grid thing. I remember these little things in comic magazines. They give you a grid, remember, and you had to replicate it. That's what it kind of reminds me of. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The grid originated in Italy in the Renaissance for transferring drawings. Okay, does anyone else? Want to share? Okay, some people have typed. Someone said holding the pencil differently helps. Okay, great. Yeah, being able to lightly sketch, but specifically for drawing circles, holding your pencil like this actually helps you, you know, to get, you know, it's looser, but it can actually help. That movement can help a lot with finding the circle. Okay.
I'd like to share.
Okay. Great. Let me see.
What do I do? I said, okay.
Yeah. Can you turn your camera on if you want to?
Oh, how do I do that? I thought it was on. How do I turn? There you go.
Okay.
Is that it? No.
Sorry, I'm looking for you in the. Okay. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'll just talk if you can't see me.
No, we can see.
You can see me? Oh, I can't see me.
Okay. We can see your eyes.
Like Marcia, I've found the axes help me a lot.
Good.
And I've never measured before, so that's kind of a challenge for me. But I find that it helps a lot, particularly, well, that's what it's for proportions, like how big is this one compared to how big that one is. But this is kind of silly, but okay, I'm measuring my pencil, and I put it on my paper. Like, how do I mark both the ends at the same time?
Oh, yeah. So measurements are relational. They're in relationship to each other. It doesn't have to be the exact measurements that you use. They have to be in relationship to each other.
Oh,
so if I measure something and see that it's twice as long as it is tall, then I translate that to my paper. It can be any length or width, height or width. It just has to be twice as long as it is tall. But it doesn't have to be the exact relationship that you remembered. It's a proportional thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was taking it too literally.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It makes sense.
That's
Yeah,
my engineer brain.
Well, it's a lot of things to manage simultaneously.
Yeah, and so
okay, cool. Yeah.
This is what I came up with. I'm slow, and it was hard to get the whole
That
thing.
looks really good, though. But this is
like
something that you actually want to take your time with. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
looks really good. Cool.
So
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Great. And then Catherine said it was enough time for her, and she learned to slow down and pay attention to how different the curves are relative to each other. Yeah, that's great, right? Because they really are. Like the bowl had a different sort of shape, right? The bowl, the ellipses, the circle on top, it was wider, and the object started to curve in like more narrowly than the cup. The cup sort of, the edges lined up with the circle on top, right? And how you see more of the bowl because it's lower. That's really great. Okay, yeah, so working with the two objects together in relationship to each other starts to help you also think about, okay, when it's taller, I see less of the circle, it's shorter. And as it gets lower, I see more of the circle. Okay, great. Anyone else?
Kind of hard.
Hi, Jen.
Oh, do you want to share?
Sure.
Okay, Michael will share.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can
Can you see it?
Yes, beautiful. Can you move it a little to your left slightly?
This way.
Yeah, there you go.
My interesting
yes.
discovery was I raised things up on the right side consistently.
Okay, good.
Even
so
when
then when you do that, you can
doing it.
automatically look for it and correct it.
Yeah.
Your drawing's beautiful. I also love that you added the stripe in the middle of the cup.
Yeah.
He had 2 extra minutes.
But what I learned there was that the stripe loop at the bottom is a little deeper than the one at the top, than the one above it, than the
You have to do yours.
yeah, you have to kind of do these little adjustments as it goes down the cup.
Right. And then when you think about it that way, it's right, it has a procedure and it makes sense. And then it really makes sense in perspective in your drawing. That's really great. Beautiful. Thank you. Connie says, it's hard to be so precise, but it doesn't work if you don't take the time. Yeah, so this is a kind of drawing where you can be really loose at first and have a light sort of searching line, and then you want to rein it in as you go, right? And as you become more certain, and you have to be specific about where the line is, right? What is the shape of the circle? Great. Anyone else? Jan, great. I wondered if you were going to share. Can you unmute? I'll try and unmute you. 1 second.
Can you see it?
Yeah, now I can. Yes, perfect. Great. You look really good. Can you go back slightly because we're getting a detail view?
Oh, okay.
Pull
Where?
your drawing back a little bit.
There we go.
Yeah. No. Great. These are beautiful. Like the cup has the more narrow circle, right? The bowl has the deeper one, the taller one. Yeah. Do you feel confident about this drawing?
I don't feel confident, but I feel like I have strategies that I didn't have before. So I don't, so at least now when I see a round shape, I won't feel completely at a loss about how to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right? I mean, it's hard to just draw it out of nowhere. Right? So when they're in relationship to each other, or then you really have a process, right? A procedure. Even though it seems clinical, right? It doesn't have to be. But just think about where is it, and then think about how tall is my circle, right? And then as it gets lower and lower, it's going to get taller for something like a cup, right? Where you can see into the top of it. Okay. Yeah, so Catherine says that her camera is not working, so she can't share, but she appreciates seeing everyone else's work. Thank you. Yeah. It actually makes a huge difference to share your insights. I mean, tell what you're learning, show your drawing, so that we can all learn from each other. Okay, Emanuela, do you want to show us your drawing?
Can you see? Can you see?
Okay. Okay.
Can you see? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Can you
This
see?
is really nice drawing.
Yes, I didn't maintain the proportion between the object. Maybe the cup was behind, more behind than the other, but
that's okay. Yes. Yes. What's important are the ellipses. You can't hear me. Can you hear me?
The voice is very noisy. I tried to.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, we've been having some technical difficulties. Yeah, what I wanted to say is that what's important is the relationship between the ellipses, the circles. So it seems like you did that correctly. They look really good. Do you feel like you were able to see the difference between the two circles?
Which circle? I can't. Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Very noisy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is everyone else having trouble hearing? Someone says no, they can hear. There's occasionally feedback. Okay.
We can hear you, but you were breaking up earlier.
Okay, yeah, you know, we've just had a lot of technical problems. Okay, sorry about that. Ugh. Let
And
me,
now the video's off.
yeah, I turned my video off because it seems to help sometimes. Okay, so I'm sorry about the technical problems. Actually, I'm thinking maybe we'll switch to a different platform and try. We've just been having a lot of problems with this one. But, okay, thank you everyone for sharing. I'm sorry about any technical difficulties. Listen, you can always write to me directly and ask me any questions, or share drawings, get feedback. We have a group on Facebook that can be a great place to share drawings, learn things. I'll share more drawings. I'll put some challenges on there if any of you would like to take the challenge of drawing more ellipses. That's through our Sketching Room Tours Facebook page. So our next class is going to be on Saturday, and that's going to be a much more free, loose class, and that's about making one-line continuous drawings. So these are really, really fun.